Okay, so welcome to Chassidus live from Tzfas, Israel, and we are going to be talking today a very important subject, the subject of tzedakah. So I like taking a subject and just kind of really going through the whole subject. You know, it says that the Torah is a niyah b'makom echad and a shira b'makom acher, is rich in another place. So in other words, by the way, if anybody needs to put their phone on mute, please put the phone on mute so it doesn't have any background noise. So what does this mean? How does it work that, there are a lot of details in tzedakah. So how does it work that in all of its different ramifications? So there's a lot of different details when it comes to tzedakah, how to give, how much to give, when to give. And so that's what we're kind of going to do now. Okay. So without further ado, there's a couple of factors here. Everybody knows about Meiser, right? We all know that we're meant to give 10% to charity. But in fact, it's not so simple, because the 10% that we're meant to give to charity is actually specifically if you could afford to. A person can't afford to give 10%. Let's say, God forbid, they literally have to use the money to eat. So then they have an obligation to give tzedakah. So 10% is really an obligation if you can. But everybody, even a poor person that receives tzedakah, still has an obligation to give tzedakah. Tzedakah is an obligation of every single Jew. And then the question, of course, is who is the obligation to tzedakah to? What does the obligation look like? And what are the best ways of doing it? So let's start with the first question. What is the obligation of tzedakah? So effectively speaking, tzedakah is, let's imagine it's a scenario where a person does have what they call disposable income. They do have, let's say, they're 10%. Let's say they have, 1,000 shekel that they can give out. So the question then becomes, what is the correct way to give out that money? So we know that, first of all, there's a mitzvah to give to anybody that asks. It's not nice to refuse someone. Of course, in a Jewish community, you have some people that they live off of tzedakah. So it's a mitzvah to give anyone, but those people that are kind of professional fundraisers and they're going around and asking everybody, it's not a mitzvah to give them a lot of money, because they are effectively, this is what they do. So you can give them a coin, give them something, and obviously try to be nice about it as well. As the Rambam says, if you give begrudgingly, it's not nice. Try to give it. They say the white of your teeth is better than the white of milk that you give. Giving somebody spiritual, in fact, you have to be very sensitive to a person that's collecting, because it's not fun. A person might think, oh, this person is a nudnik. But you think it's fun to be a nudnik? You think it's fun to have to go to everybody and ask them for money? So it's actually a very shameful process that this person is in. So a person should be respectful of such a person. A person is humbled by the circumstances, and that is actually a very holy person. Remember, I was at 770 once. There's a guy, a couple of people that go there every day to collect. People give a lot of money. So, a lot of little money, but there's a lot of people. So there's a young chutzpah kid. He says, why don't you get a job? It's very interesting what this man said to him. He says, I wish upon you that one day that you'll be 70 and you're collecting money and somebody says to you, why don't you get a job, right? So a person has to be sensitive to the plight. In fact, we have to be sensitive in general, because in general, the way that the Western world looks at poverty is a very, very incorrect way. It looks at the world as, people should be working. But in fact, if you know anything about economics, and in fact, it says this clearly in the Torah, there's always 5% of a population that's unemployed, and they're actually unemployable. If everybody could literally have as many jobs as they wanted, it wouldn't have a system where there'd be a need. The whole system works in a specific way, that there has to be people that need money, and there have to be people that can give jobs. And obviously, if there was just all the money was flush, then who would go work, right? We saw this very clearly with COVID. When the government was giving out money for free, nobody was going to work. So the truth of the matter is that we are in a situation that there will always be poor people, and there will always be people that need. And it's a tremendous privilege to be the one to be giving. But the way a person gives is very, very important. The person has to realize that the person that's taking is feeling shame. So the person that's giving has to give with compassion. They have to give with a sensitivity towards the person that they're giving to. This is very, very, very important. I have a friend, very special Yid. He came from America. We were at the Rashbi together. There are a lot of fundraisers, and they're kind of aggressive as well. And he decided, I don't know, he gave him a coin. The guy wanted more. He decided he's not giving him more. But the way he did it was beautiful. He did it with like a compassionate heart. He did it with a smile. In other words, like, I love you very much. I wish I can give you more, but I'm sorry I can't. And that's very, very important. It's important even if you have to show a boundary, to show the boundary with compassion. This is number one. But the truth is that is not the most important people to give tzedakah to. It's an obligation. Somebody's asking, you don't want to embarrass them, reject them. That's not the most important people to give tzedakah to. First and foremost comes family. A person has family, if it's a parent, or it's a brother or sister that's struggling. Because ultimately, tzedakah is like a circle. And the idea of tzedakah is to close the circle. There's a gap in the circle. Somebody's lacking, and somebody has to close the circle. And so the people that we're most obligated towards are our own family. Those are the people that we are most obligated towards, as opposed to the secular world that looks at money, that money is mine, and therefore charity is benevolence. In the Jewish world, charity comes from the word tzedakah, which means tzedek, which means just. It's just that somebody, my brother, who God forbid doesn't have money, should have money from me. It's unjust if I don't give money to somebody that needs money. Like the Alter Rebbe says, it's unjust for a person to be eating steak when another person doesn't have bread. You only have 2 glasses of water. You can say that your life comes before the other person. But it doesn't apply when you're eating steak and the other person doesn't have the basics. Literally, from a halachic perspective, a person needs to give literally all their money to charity. I mean, obviously, you have to have money to live. But beyond the money to live, as long as there's a Jew that doesn't have, let's say, rent, or doesn't have food on his table, a person doesn't have a right to take a vacation. Because you are indulging in a luxury while that other person doesn't have a necessity. So you're certainly entitled to have a beautiful life as long as somebody else has his necessities. But if a fellow Jew doesn't have a roof over his head, doesn't have food in his stomach, and you want to take a vacation or you want to invest and make more money, then unless that money is specifically to give to charity, you actually don't have a right to do it. And a simple example of this is, imagine somebody is, I don't know, God forbid, going to commit suicide, is going to jump off a building. So you don't have a right now to say, I'm going to learn Torah. Right now, you have to go and save that person. That's what you have to do. And there is an absolute obligation to save that person. And so therefore, the world that we have to see is not a world where there are people that have and people that don't have, and the people that have to help the people that don't have. No, it's a world in which you have a duty to help another person in any way that you can. And it changes the reality of life, because it's not like basically the Rebbe's point is that we're all a non-profit organization. When you come into the world, you're not here for yourself. You're not here to have a good name and to have a good steak. That's not what you're here for. You're here to help other people. So if there's a person that needs help, obviously if you can't do anything about it, you can't do anything about it. Furthermore, as we said before, there's a hierarchy. If you only have 1,000 shekel, you have to choose those that are closest to you. It says people of Israel may be taking precedence of people outside of Israel. Your own community takes precedence. A Talmud Chacham, a Torah scholar, may take precedence. But there's a specific hierarchy of who you have to help. But let's say you had unlimited funds. So I'm a billionaire, right? So the idea that a Jew has $1 billion in the bank account is kind of a halachic prohibition, because there's no way that you can justify. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with having money. Everybody should be filthy rich. It's a wonderful thing. But why should you be filthy rich? You should be filthy rich in order to help out other people. And if all you're doing is accumulating money and you're living a very nice lifestyle while other people don't have, and again, we're not here to condemn the rich. The rich give a lot of charity. And let's say if they're giving 10% of $1 billion, it's a lot of money. I mean, there's a Jew who gives $40 million or so. I don't know if it's Meiser, a little bit more than Meiser. But in the end of the day, if you have $400 million and there are other people that are suffering, I mean, I'm a little bit involved in charity work. So just people don't know this, but there's a tremendous poverty in Israel. There are hundreds of thousands of people that are living below the poverty line. Koil Chabad, for example, from what I understand, they give out 10,000 food packages a month. Meanwhile, they could be giving out 200,000 food packages a month. So it's a question of money. In fact, the government of Israel is not good about this. In America, there's something called food stamps, which, by the way, the Rebbe was the founder of food stamps. So they help people with food. In Israel, they actually use Koil Chabad. It's very, very minimal the amount. The person doesn't have food. Where are they going to go? A couple soup kitchens here, there, whatever. It's not okay. There has to be a basic safety net, which the government should be providing. I mean, the government does do some pituach, this and that, so it's something. But the point is that it's far cry from what needs to be happening. And in fact, in many, many Western countries, they're doing a much better job at helping people in America with food stamps, with basic food supplies than they're doing in Israel. But the point is to say that charity is an obligation. Charity is not a choice. Charity is an obligation. And the way it works is, it depends. If a person doesn't have, then, you have to give something. If a person has, then again, there's a hierarchy. There's the family, there's the community, there's Israel, there's the Talmud Chacham, there's the way you do it. Ultimately, the highest form of charity is to give somebody a loan or to give them a job, because the essence of charity is to help somebody not be embarrassed by the circumstances. It's very, very embarrassing when a person cannot provide food for themselves. Effectively, what is depression? Depression is when we feel helpless and hopeless. So a body has a need for food. God forbid, if a person can't provide for themselves, then the body becomes depressed. They become helpless. They become hopeless. So this is our job, to take somebody out of that situation. The best thing is not to give them charity, but is to give them a job, something that's going to give them the ability to be on their own 2 feet. They could have dignity. So in this sense, a person that teaches a skill or helps somebody get a job, this is the highest form of charity. Of course, there are other forms of charity. The Rebbe says, you help somebody overcome their Yetzer Hara. You help somebody overcome an addiction. You help somebody find the meaning of life. These are very, very powerful forms of charity. In fact, they can be life and death situations. Many people today are dying or committing suicide from anxiety, lack of purpose in life, this and that. This is not a joke. These are very, 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 very significant things that you can do to make the world a better place. So the point is, number one, that tzedakah is an obligation. And it's not like something like, I could dispense of my obligation. Until Mashiach comes and every single person has everything they need, we are tzedakah machines. There's a very special woman. She ran a company. So she asked me something about charity. Actually, not a Jewish woman. So she said, charity is not something that we give. Charity is what we are. We are charity. That's why I said it's very good to think of yourself as a non-profit organization. It's not like, I'm here to gain in life, and I'm also going to be benevolent. I'm also going to give. No, you're here to give in life. Now, in order to give, it's very, very beneficial to be very wealthy, because the wealthier you are, this crazy thing in the world, which really comes from jealousy, like Obama, Yamach Shemai, he said, famously, like about wealthy people, you didn't create it. First of all, what business is it of yours to tell somebody what they did do or they didn't do? Who are you to condemn anyone else? I called him the shamer in chief. And second of all, this pathological hatred towards wealthy people comes from a actual narcissistic jealousy of other people's success. It's like mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest one of all? And in fact, there's a book, it's called The Israel Test. It was written by a very famous, very, very competent and very smart economist, George Gilder. And effectively, it's in defense of Israel. And he says that Americans and Jews have something in common. When somebody else has something, we're happy for them. You know, if you tell me that you built a mansion, I'll be very happy for you. Very good. Enjoy your mansion. And, I'm very happy for you. You don't even have to invite me. I'm just happy that you're happy. But a person that feels, anxiety and depression and has a narcissistic identity that I'm the best, and you build a mansion, you are actually taking away my covet, my honor, because we build in our mind a framework of reality. And in that framework, I'm the best. So if I'm the best, how come you have something that is better than me? And that's why there's anti-Semitism and hatred. We've spoken about it a lot of times. So this hatred of quote unquote towards wealthy people, towards business, is completely false. And the greatest proof is that the people that indulge in that hatred are the worst abusers of money themselves. I think the communist leaders didn't live like kings. The Obama himself, he's not living like a king in a mansion. Where on earth did a guy that was basically a community radical activist, where did he get his money from? How much money did he take in bribes to be able to suddenly live like a multimillionaire? So the point is, they're just simply jealous of other people's money. Nobody's taking money. Money is something that people work very, very, very hard to create. In order to make money, you have to be very smart. You have to be very careful. You should be ethical as well, obviously. This is the way a person makes money. It's not a class about making money, so I'm not going into that. But the point is that 99% of the time when a person makes money, they do it ethically and with hard work and with hard effort. And nobody's taking away money from anybody else. And so therefore, the jealousy and this anti-money thing is really coming not from the truth of helping the poor, because the rich don't take from the poor. In fact, the rich create jobs. They create services. Without the wealthy people, or without people that are basically, a wealthy person, not a genius in some way, he's just very driven. Without these people, you think there'd be cars on the streets, think there'd be phones, think there'd be computers, think there would be homes to rent. These are people that work very hard to create. Obviously, nobody's helping them. They are working very hard to create a service that people are going to buy. Are they forcing someone to buy their service? No, it's a free world. Nobody has to don't have to go into the grocery store and buy somebody's bread. So they're providing a service. They're taking risk, and other people are actually using that service, not because they like them, but because they need them. So they're the most important thing for the world. In fact, God, according to Hasidus and Kabbalah, God gives certain people certain talents that they have in order for the world to have the services, people to have jobs, etc., etc. It's a lot of work, a lot of risk. I have a friend, for example, that has a company. Every month, he has to pay $1 million in salaries. You know what that means, to pay $1 million? And he has to have the income. It's not simple. His whole operation, and it's not like every month he has it. Every single month, he's waiting for the clients to pay him so he can pay the employee. So the employee just has to do a job. He's got to stress if there's $1 million in the bank account. So it's not a simple thing to run a company. I certainly don't have the emotional capacity. I think I wouldn't have the emotional capacity to know that there are 50 people that their families are not going to eat if I don't get my $1 million. It's like you have to be able to handle a lot. It's not a simple thing. So all of that is what we call a mimer or musgar, a Hasidic commercial break, just to say that this insanity of negativity towards money is not coming from positivity, but it's coming from jealousy. So getting back on the money idea, everybody should, in fact, we have a blessing in this generation to be wealthy, but of course we have to do everything in our power to unveil the riches that we already have, but we have to unveil those riches through effort and obviously ethical business behaviors, good ideas, etc., etc. Okay. So in conclusion, what have we discussed? We have discussed that charity is an obligation. It's not a benevolent thing to do. It's a duty that we have. Furthermore, everybody is obligated in charity, even somebody that's receiving charity. Furthermore, if a person has the capacity, there are three levels. There's 10%, there's 20%, and there's everything. There are people that Mendel Futzfass, for example, he would do business in Russia. Literally, he would give away everything. In fact, his business partners used to have to keep some money for him to invest in the next business deal because he would literally give it all away. And then there is the way you need to give. You need to give compassionately. You need to give with a smile, give with love, feel compassion for the person that needs money. Because being in a situation of need, a person that's giving often doesn't understand the shame of the person that's receiving. You have to feel compassion for that person. Furthermore, you have to know the hierarchy. Family comes first. Your children, obviously parents, whatever comes first. Then your community. Jews in Israel, Talmud Chacham, Jews outside of Israel. Obviously, we give to Gentiles as well. We don't prevent Gentiles for the way of peace. We care about everybody. We want everybody. In fact, Jews excel in charity. Jews give more charity to Gentiles than probably Gentiles themselves do. And we are in a very great generation. We're in a generation, in fact, the Rebbe says that our generation is worthy of Mashiach because of the amount of charity that's given. Now I'm going to tell you something really interesting. The Rebbe spoke to somebody, and he said that there were three communities. There was the Lithuanian community. This Lithuanian community had a lot of Torah. It was a community based on Torah. Then there was the Russian community. The Chabad was mainly in Russia, and they were very much into tefillah, prayer, deep people. And then there was American Jews. They were basically secular, but they excelled in the giving of charity. I mean, American Jewish money is really what supported the rebuilding of the Jewish communities in Europe after World War I. They literally kind of supported the creation of Israel. They supported the Jews, the immigrants, literally, and they're still doing tremendous amounts of stuff. And so the Rebbe said something fascinating. He says, we find the Lithuanian community, unfortunately, was decimated. Basically, nothing was left of it. The Russian community, something small was left of it. But the American community was untouched. We find how much Hashem loves tzedakah. I was just thinking of a story. Let me just think of the story for a second. Reminded me of a different story. So there was a Reb Mendel Futzfass, like I said before, he was a very, very charitable person. And he was kind of, after he left, it's a great story. So he was put into Siberia for 20 years of labor. You can't imagine what that is. People died like flies at 20 years of hard labor in Siberia. As soon as he came out of Siberia, he did a fundraiser for himself. And then he gave all the money to charity. He says, I just came out of Siberia. People are going to feel bad for me. They're going to give me money. Then he had money to give away. This is the kind of person that he was. He didn't even think about himself after 20 years. And he was the mashpi. He was kind of the model to the Jews. And the Jews were doing these underground yeshivas. They were doing... it was very, very dangerous. If anyone was caught, they were basically killed. And so there was a question amongst the Hasidim, should they do these underground schools just for the Hasidic community? Or should they actually do it also? They had a local Sephardic community. And again, it was a very dangerous thing. It was literally a life and death thing. So they came to him. So what do you think? He says, listen. He says, even if Eliyahu Hanavi, Elijah the prophet, comes and tells you not to help a Jew, don't listen to him. A Jew, no matter who he is, what circumstance it is, we never ask a question. A person needs help, you help them spiritually and physically. That's your job. There's a story with my great uncle. No, not actually great uncle. It's kind of like a great uncle. Long story short, my grandfather had a nephew and a niece that survived the Holocaust. And she, in fact, I think she was hidden in a rabbit cage for 2 years. May those who participated burn for eternity. And in any event, she, thank God, was saved. And she came to America. And so she was engaged to a guy, this Rabbi Goldschmidt. Rabbi Goldschmidt's father, in fact, was murdered in the Hebron massacre. Arab savages came and hacked to death Jews around the country. So to make a long story short, the Rebbe was like a father to him. He advised him. So there was an issue because the Rebbe was into the idea that women should wear a sheitel. And she didn't want to wear, those days very few women wore sheitels. It was the Rebbe kind of got the Jewish women in America slowly but surely to do it, but very few women wore sheitels. So she decided that she's not interested in wearing a sheitel. Sheitel will make her look old. So my grandfather went over to this man. He says, we have a problem. Because you obviously want the Rebbe to be Masad Kedusha. You want the Rebbe to be the rabbi officiating at your wedding, which the Rebbe did in the early years. And the Rebbe had a policy of only being Masad Kedusha, only doing it if the woman would wear a sheitel. And as such, it is a problem because it is a problem. Shalom Aleichem, welcome. As such, it's a problem. What is the problem? Because what's going to happen is that you're probably not going to want to marry this person, and this is whatever. It's a problem. So she was actually also freaking out. She said, "Oh, now I'm going to be stuck at Rabbi Weinberg's home. I'm being an old maid. No one's going to marry me." And so he said, "No, tell her that it's not a problem. I'm going to marry her even if she doesn't wear a sheitel," which to him was a big sacrifice. So first of all, it was interesting. So she said, "Why?" She says, "Because the Rebbe told me." Remember, he had a close relationship with the Rebbe. The Rebbe said, "Avas Yisrael, loving a fellow Jew, means to help every single Jew. It doesn't matter who they are, whether it's a male, it's a female, it's a child, who, what, where, when. Avas Yisrael doesn't differentiate. You have to help." And so she is a Jewish woman, and this is an issue to her, and so therefore I forgo it. And then she says, "Oh, if that's what Avas Yisrael means, then I'm going to wear a sheitel out of Avas Yisrael to this man." They lived and they had beautiful children and a beautiful life. In fact, the Rebbe told him to open up a butcher shop. The Rebbe told him that he should ensure that everybody has meat for Shabbos. It doesn't matter if they can pay or not. And his butcher shop literally was an open house. If you didn't have money, it wasn't a problem. You came. In fact, I was once at a speech, and there was a rabbi giving a speech, and he said that he was in Crown Heights, and there was a wedding, and there was a table at the wedding. And at this table, there was a table for poor people, so they sat at the wedding. Every table in Crown Heights, every wedding in Crown Heights has a table for random people. Which community, every wedding, there's a table, maybe hopefully in Israel, but there's a table for people that are poor. Come and have a meal here. It says that's Judaism. Judaism is an unconditional love. And so, Judaism is not how good we look in the eyes of someone else. Judaism is how good we are in our heart. That's Judaism. And so a person has to be very, very compassionate. And we've summarized basically, I've said it before, but because it's a class in charity, we'll give the class. There's a person by the name of Binyamin HaTzadik. Binyamin HaTzadik obviously was a tzaddik. And he was a collector. In fact, he's buried here in Tzfat. And there was a lady that came to him, was a hunger, and she said, "Rabbi, I need some money for my family. I have 7 kids." She was a widow. She said, "I'm very sorry. I just gave out all the funds from the charity box." She said, "Rabbi, if you don't save me, we're all going to die." So he said, "Okay, from now on, you're going to eat at my table. Whatever I have, you're going to have 2. And this is how they survived through the hunger until things got a little better. And then when it was his turn to pass away, the angels that he created, because everything good that we do creates angels, the angels that he created, they said to Hashem, "How can you take this person from the world?" So they gave him another 17 years of life. So the point of the matter is that we are in a situation in life that every mitzvah we do, it says when you give tzedakah, you create a prakrit. You create an angel. And furthermore, a Jew has to know, the Alter Rebbe says that when we give charity, you're not actually giving away your money. You're loaning your money to God. God will ensure you get that money back. And I've seen it many, many times in my life that I've given charity, and that money will always come back to me. You never lose from giving charity. In fact, it's very likely that you gain. We say, Asher b'shvil shetisasher. You should give 10%. The Rebbe says not only 10%, you should always give more, maybe 11%. You don't want to be stingy with God. And God then comes into that money and he blesses that money. And that money isn't used for bad things, that money, because every money, it has a kind of, attached to it, has a kind of spiritual message. Should it be a blessing? God forbid, not a blessing. Money that's created on Shabbos, somehow it can disappear. Could disappear, in different ways. Nothing really is owned by us. God owns everything. Even after you have that money, it's still God's money. Even if when it's in your bank account, it's still God's money. So a person has to be very, very careful not to be cheap with God. When God wants us to do something, he wants us to do. So money, in a way, could be an idol. It could be an idol when we're coming from, like the Baal Shem Tov says, people want to be rich because they want other people to think that they're rich. In other words, it could be a self-esteem issue. Or money can be a very amazing tool. And in fact, the Rebbe was very into people making money and instructed us to do everything in our power to make money. Because, of course, as my friend Yosef Ben Hashav, a great genius, says, money in the hands of good people is a very good thing. It's a wonderful thing. And so, therefore, let's do a blessing that we should all be very wealthy. And in terms of wealth itself, I have a thing, you can look it up, Kabbalah on Money. It's on my website, KabbalahWisdom.org. And we basically have a trick from the Baal Shem Tov. He says you just have to be happy. A lot of the studies in the modern stuff say happiness is the key. You see a lot of the things. I was a rabbi in a resort town, a lot of wealthy people, and I actually thought about what do these people have in common. There were two things I could come up with. One was happiness, and the other was treating their wives well. It says that if you treat your wife well, this is also a good segula for happiness, for making money. So in conclusion, we've discussed concepts of charity. We've discussed also the notion that a person that can't justify a luxurious life while other people don't have the basics. So before you buy your Learjet, make sure that every single Jew is properly fed and housed. We discussed also that charity is not only a physical thing, there's also a basically psychological thing. Somebody doesn't know the difference between right and wrong. They have a spiritual need for truth. This is also charity. It says about Abraham that Abraham was kind. He's kind with his money, with his time, and with his soul. So he was kind. He opened up a free hotel. He also gave people his time, or his body served them. And also his time was very precious to him because he was basically a researcher. People don't know this, but Avraham Avinu wrote one of the most important books of Kabbalah, Sefer Yetzirah. They say he wrote either 400 books or 400 chapters about the ego. And it's interesting because the East is all into the ego, or trying to get rid of the ego, which in a way is a problem because our job is to make our ego godly, not to get rid of it. But in any event, the idea of they say that Avram sent some of his children to the East with false names of God. So this is a very, very important concept. And I don't know if there's anything we left out, but I'd like to do a meditation with you. And Hashem should bless this meditation and bless us with an ability that it should generate a lot of income for each and every one of us, a great heart for each and every one of us. And, meditations can affect the universe itself. It should generate for everyone. And like we said before, the Rebbe said that we are really in a generation that really excels in charity. He said that our generation gives more charity, even though there are more Jews that are not religious, but we give more charity than ever before. So we are in a very, very holy time. And it says that Mashiach, Staka Mekadev, charity brings the redemption. So we are in a time that there's going to be a tremendous amount of redemption in the highest way possible because of the tremendous amount of charity that we do. Just before we do the meditation, just want to see if there's any questions. Does anybody have any questions? No questions? Okay, so we will start the okay. Yeah, no problem. So let's we'll start the meditation now. Okay, so take a deep breath and breathe in Hashem, breathe out exile, and breathe in money, and breathe out negative associations to money, no Christian guilt, and breathe in an image of yourself just being able to transfer to millions of people, millions of dollars. See yourself having the capacity. The Rebbe says today that the internet gives us the ability to transfer money to anyone, anywhere in the world. So just imagine that you could transfer to any Jew that needs, to their bank account, millions of dollars to help them out completely. Imagine being able to transfer to every Jewish organization that needs as much money as they need. That would be billions of dollars. There's no limitation to Hashem. And just be happy. Just have faith that Hashem will give you the ability. Of course, you have to make effort. A person can't just sit on their tuchas and think that money is going to come to them. And you have to have an advisor, a financial advisor. And you have to listen, just like in life. If you want to get healthy, you go to a doctor or a nutritionist and you listen. So in a business sense, if you want to have a healthy financial life, you have to go to your financial advisor and you have to listen to them. And this will be the kli, this will be the opportunity that God has to give you a lot of money. I encourage you to read my book, booklet, my thing, Kabbalah on Money. And in this way, with Hashem's help, we should all be financially exceedingly wealthy. And even more importantly, not to, there's a Jew that came, I don't want to say the name of the family, but he came from Russia. And he made a lot of money. He was a very charitable person. He was thinking of giving his company to his children. The Rebbe said, don't give it to the children. They don't know what to do with the money. Right? So people that are very wealthy, you find very often they start building a beautiful home and they have a plane and they have a whole staff. For crying out loud, you don't need a plane and you don't need a staff. My grandfather, in fact, was a very wealthy man and he lived basically in a condo. And there's a book written, The Millionaire Next Door. There are many very wealthy people. Warren Buffett, one of the wealthiest people, lives in a simple home. He has an old truck. Because ultimately, money is a tool. It's like water. It's to water, to spread it around. And as you spread it, as you give it, Hashem gives it back to you. You create a cycle. It's infinitely better. Somebody once was saying that he's saving his money and he's going to give charity after he dies. Rebbe said, why do you have to do it after you die? Why can't you see the rewards of your fruit in this lifetime? You could do it now. So a person could make and could give, and we have to have in mind the intention that money to us will not be to just physically increase our physical possessions, but to increase our spiritual possessions. They say that the Queen of England once asked Moses Montefiore, financially he was very, very wealthy, did tremendous amount. He built up the Cave of Rachel, the Kaisel. He gave tremendous amounts to charity. He had a lot in the stock market in the times of Queen Victoria. She said, how much are you worth? And he gave an amount. She says, no, Moses, we all know you're worth a lot more than that. He says, that's the amount I gave to charity. So we have to know our value in life is not what's in our bank account, but what's come through our bank account. Our value in life is not what we have received from others, but what we have given to others. May Hashem bless. I know all of you on the phone call are very holy, special people. May Hashem bless each and every one of you with literally exceedingly great amounts of wealth earned in easy. Obviously, it always takes effort, but in ways of having mashpia. So it's simple to say, okay, whatever he says I'm going to do, that's going to be the channel, because these are just channels that Hashem's channeling the money. And then let us have the wisdom to know that the money is there to channel it out. And it's a funnel. Comes in, goes out, comes in, goes out. L'chaim v'levracha.